Recently, gardeners in the southwest of WA have been experiencing some of the lowest rainfall on record. Beck and Simon Bell own a 150-hectare sheep farm in Baylor, about an hour east of Perth.
We're up to 1100. What did we start on?
And despite being relatively close to the city, water supply is always front of mind.
It's been one of the driest years that we've seen in this area. Our major water supply is from dams, so it's runoff and catchment. Two of them are completely dry. We had half the yearly rainfall last year that we would normally get. It's created less feed, and we're having big problems with water at the moment as far as having enough just to water the livestock.
While southwest gardeners are doing a rain dance, in Australia's vast interior, there are gardeners who deal with dry conditions on a permanent basis. So what do you do when water is scarce and your nearest garden supply retailer is literally hundreds of kilometres away? Well, you need to be creative and you need to be resourceful.
I've been travelling extensively through South Australia, WA, NT. I'm on full loops of those three states over the last 3 years.
David de Vries has a head full of creative ideas and a wagon full of resources.
I'll get to remote Aboriginal communities, schools, community gardens in small towns. Sometimes I'll get a local within a small town who'll host me to come and run a workshop and invite their neighbours and friends along.
Each year, he covers tens of thousands of kilometres, introducing regional and remote gardeners to inexpensive, low-water methods that will increase productivity.
So here's a quandong.
I went to one of David's Wicking Garden Beds workshops to see how we can produce food and save water.
Just test some of this water and see what the pH is. So a lot of people come into my workshops, the word wicking is throwing them a bit. Once a year or so, you can take some of this liquid out of the bed. The lower half of the chamber is essentially a cavity that can get loaded up with water. There's no holes in the base of the bed. There's a maximum point that the water can get to, and there's just a few pockets where soil can wick. Water's sticky stuff, and this wicking effect of good growing media is such that it can pull against gravity through capillary action and ensure that all the growing media has good amount of moisture through it. So it's about setting up a system to store water and make it available continuously to the plants. They're very practical in that you can control the water, you can contain the nutrients, you can avoid potential problems with the local soils. I find as a useful generalisation right through inland Australia, the soils are very alkaline, and within the container of the wicking bed, you can create an environment where your vegetables and flowers will prosper.
It got me involved in understanding where we can move in accordance with the sun and the wind and how to plant according to that in your small one by one. The other fun part about David's workshops is the fact that everyone gets on the tools. You know, the jigsaw gets handed to the nearest female and away you go, and you just get this sense of purpose and that you have got what it takes to be able to make these beautiful beds.
Josh, when I'm travelling remotely, I like to use materials that are available, readily available, and recycle them. And it's really up to your imagination what you can use. One very common container all around the country are these 20-litre containers. And what I do is just cut the top off the container. Here's the top, but I've also cut a big divot out of that. So we just put that in the base there. And next up, we need to create an overflow system. I've already drilled a 22mm hole in the side. And if you just want to put that in for me.
This is a grommet.
This is a 19mm grommet. And into a 19mm grommet fits a 19mm elbow.
Just a standard irrigation fitting and a bit of poly pipe.
Yes. It does require a bit of force, so you're getting there. That's the way.
And this is like a little valve, isn't it? So you can either have a high water level.
That's it.
Or a lower water level.
Or we can take the water out quite easily and make the whole thing easy to move around the home.
Okay. Look at that, nice and sealed.
What we're doing is setting up a zone here that we can store water in, and to keep the soil from falling into that water, we're going to put a piece of geotextile. Sometimes this is sold as drain mat. It's a cloth that won't rot in the ground, but it allows water to pass through freely. Just going to poke that to create a cup that's going to hold all the soil out of the water zone. We're adding the perlite in.
And that's just so the organic matter in that soil's not sitting in the water and going anaerobic and smelly, basically.
We're not in any way inhibiting this potting mix that I'm now adding from mixing in, which will act as a good wick. I always travel the country with worms to ensure that I can bring a bit of life. Now, just a touch more of the growing media. We can look at plotting, in this case, a geranium, backfill around the plant. This one's pretty well finished now. All we need to do is add water and stand back and enjoy, and that water will come up to a height preset by our elbow there. We can never flood the growing part of the plant, but we can store water in the lower section, and the same principles can be used for whatever container you've got to hand. I do a lot of these blue barrels, which are another very common and very cheap thing to get a hold of. I often put these in busy places like schools.
So this top part here becomes like the protective barrier around the plant, but still plenty of light and air gets in.
That's right.
That's great.
What we're able to see in that 1x1 bed is an example of what we're seeing out on the broadacre. These babies.
We saw how fertile that soil was, and then we're looking at developing systems that don't require the use of chemical fertilisers and nitrogen. So we are trialling utilising worms and worm tea and applying that on a broadacre scale to reduce our inputs and to hopefully create a healthier soil and therefore healthier animals.
I came away from David's Wicking Garden Beds workshops with more than I would have ever imagined. To me, it just puts it under a focus, under a microscope, if you like, where we can be involved and aware of what's going on in the soil underneath the plants and everything above. So for me, I get a lot of sense of satisfaction that I'm more of a part of what's going on out there simply because of this relationship in the wicking beds.